Okay, so we've got our wonderful game here where we can move our guy back and forth, and control him. He's got a little bit of a jump. We can change the speed of our jump if we want to. I think we change this to 250. Let's see what happens. And that looks great. But let's give some kind of point to our game. Let's give some sort of goal that we're trying to do. And so what I want to do is I'm just going to add this blue square to our game, and I will position it over this way somewhere, like this. And I am going to add a component, Physics2D, and give it a box collider. That way, in our world, we can sort of interact with this thing, maybe. Okay, so yeah, so we can't right now see my red guy is coming into this thing and is crashing into it, and it is not moving. And so what I want to do is, this is kind of a dumb game, but the idea is, we'll build on it for a little bit here, but the idea is that you can run around, and as soon as you crash into the blue thing, that should end the level. So somehow we need to figure out that we are crashing into this blue thing. And it's actually not that hard. So we're going to continue to add some code to our player controller. We'll just keep sticking it all in the same spot. And I'm going to add a new function. We'll call it void on collision enter 2D. And we will pass in a collision 2D object and call it COL. Okay, so one thing that I guess I haven't done yet on any of these is show you how to print stuff to your debug log. And so in here we'll just say debug.log, and we will just say collision. So anytime you want to print something out, it doesn't go onto your screen, but it'll go into your console. You just use debug.log and pass in the string, and it'll do that. And you can pass in variables and stuff like that if you wanted to check and see where things were on the screen or something like that. But anyways, anytime we collide with something, we should see this collision print out. And so let's see what happens if we run. We have a collision right here. And it's in our console log. And so if I jump, oops, we'll get another one. So every time we hit this black, we're getting another one. And then if I run all the way to the blue, we'll get one every time we crash into the blue. One thing you can do is you can click this collapse, and it will give you the count, how many times that print out has happened. So now if I go up and down again, we get 7, 8, if I crash into this thing, 9, 10, 11. So this is another way to look at how things are happening. So we sort of have a problem right now. When we crash into this blue thing, we want to restart the level. That's all we're going to do right now. But the problem we have right now is that we only can detect that there is a collision. We don't know who we're colliding with. And one way we can do this, we can figure it out. We have this collision 2D object that's getting passed in. We can look at the properties of that object and then make a decision based on it if it's something we need to do. One of the properties that every object has is a tag up here. And so you can give it any one of these tags, and you can also give it another tag. So I'm going to click on add tag, and I'll add one, and we will call it end goal. Okay. And that added it to our tag list. Now if we go back to blue, it still says untagged, but now we have end goal as an option. And so I'll click on that. So now when we look at this game object, we may be able to check and see what its tag is. And we can do that inside of our code. So I can say something like if col.gameObject.tag equals end goal, and make sure you get your case sensitivity correct. Make sure you spell this exactly like how you have it up here. So if it equals end goal, we can do another debug, and we'll say collided with blue. All right, so we just have an if statement that says, what is this thing that we collided with? Well, let's run and see. So the first time it runs, we just have a collision, and then when we go over here, we see collision went up by 1, and then this phrase collided with blue happened. And now if I jump, we should only see collision happen, not collided with blue. Oops. See, that's going up 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when I crash into the blue, now they're both going up. And so that's how we can determine what's happening. So right now we know if we make it this far, that we've hit our goal. So we can say something like, we can reset the level. And the way we're going to do that is, I'll just type it out. Application.loadLevel, loaded level. Okay, so these are a couple of things here. Make sure this here, it's capital L, load level. And then inside of here, it's lowercase l, loaded level. Means load the current level. Whatever level we happen to be currently on, let's just do it. And since we just want to restart the level we're on, who knows why, just because it's a simple example, we may not want our game to actually behave this way, but this is how we do it. So now if I run this thing, make sure you save, and I run, oh boy, object number 1, so let's see. Loaded level, oh, I think we want to say application, sorry about that, dot loaded level. Now it's much happier. All right, so let me show you what I did here. So I just had loaded level. All I did was put this in, and of course it has no idea what that is, but we gave it the scope to say it's an application.loaded level, and now everything is happier. So let's see what happens. If I run, crash into that thing, and now the whole thing restarts over again. Right, pretty cool. And of course, if this were a real game, we would probably have different graphics happening here so that a player would understand that this was the goal. But yeah. So let's do one more thing. I'll show you the code again. So this is all we added. And really, once you get rid of these logging statements, it's whatever it is, 4 lines of code. But the important part is that we're passing in a Collision2D object. The game object of that collision is the other object that you're colliding into. So the script is attached to our red. When we collide, the game object is the other object, the other half of the collision. And then we examine the tag field, and if it's end goal, then we're good to go, and we restart the level. So that's, I guess, a different explanation of what's going on here. I just want to do a real quick, show you how to make this level a little bit better. So we've just got this one platform here. We could have several platforms and sort of kind of stack them around. And remember when we did this thing, we dragged in our black square, and we scaled it, and then we also added a box collider 2D. Unity has this cool thing called prefab, which means it will save off all of the stuff that we did. So I'm just going to, and the way to create one is if you have an object in your scene, you can drag it down into your assets. So I will rename this, just click on it once, we'll call it black platform. And I'm going to drag that down into my assets. And now I have a black platform prefab. So anytime I drag this thing into our scene, the box collider is already going to be a part of it. So if I put another one here, notice the box collider has already been created. And so this is extremely useful when you have complex objects that have all sorts of objects attached to it. I'm going to go take this thing and move it like this. And so now when we run, we have this, we go over here, and maybe we could even go back up with our crazy way we're handling jumps, and then we can come down and reset the game. And here's another thing that's interesting. Let's see if I can get this thing to roll. Notice how as we fall off the edge, our little square starts to rotate. And that's kind of a cool effect, but if this thing was more than a square, if it was a person, and doing this may not be what you want. And so inside of our red object, under our, let's see, where is that? Freeze rotation, under our rigid body. If we freeze the rotation, does that do anything? Yeah, there we go. And so now it's not spinning out of control. And depending on the effect that you want, you can leave that thing checked or have it unchecked. It's just mainly goes for the effect that you want. Let's see. Another thing that's sort of strange is how when I start this game over, notice how these things are prefabs, right? These black platforms, but our red guy is sort of in front of this one, and then it's behind this one. Let's run it and see again. So he's behind it. Now he's in front. And that may be what you want, or it may just be happening on accident. But the reason is that over here, under the properties for each of these different platforms, we have this order and layer. And right now, our first platform is set to a 0, our next one is set to a 0, and our red is also set to a 0. So they're all set at the same thing. So you can kind of think of this layer as like a stack, just kind of drawing things on top of each other. But now that they're all the same, there's got to be some order as far as how to draw it. And basically, it's going to be drawn as in the order that they're added to the scene, which can be really complicated. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our red is always in the front. So with red selected, I will set the order and layer to a 1. And then now it should be in front of everything. Now it's in front of that one, and it's in front of this one. And it will always be in front of the blue thing as well. So yeah, there you go. So that's something that's pretty useful to learn how to do. So I think that was pretty much all I wanted to get done in this one. We did creating platforms, and that was pretty useful. So let's see, we do anything in the code. Here's our colliders. Again, the idea is to check the tag of the object you collided into, and then based on that, do some action. We'll reload the level. And I think that was it. And remember that in order for this Untitled2D to work this way, you've got to have box colliders on all your objects that are colliding with each other, and you need to have a rigid body on at least one of them. If those are not true, then you will never get this. This function won't be called. And then also make sure that this, since this thing is kind of built into Unity and to how the physics engine works, you have to spell this thing exactly with case sensitivity and everything all throughout this line. So a lot of people make this thing a little O, and then it doesn't work. It's got to be capital O. So make sure that you've got all this stuff spelled out exactly how it's supposed to be, and then everything should function right. So, yep, I think that's all I wanted to do for this.